She never saw more damage done than by folk acting on high principle. Last week I finished The Wisdom of Crowds, the third book in the Age of Madness trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and let me tell you guys right now, Joe cooked. Joe absolutely cooked in this trilogy, he absolutely cooked in this book, and honestly, I think this secures him as the best living fantasy author currently out there. This dude, every book of his, I'm entertained. Every book of his, I've enjoyed. But Age of Madness is something special because it takes everything good about Joe Abercrombie's writing, from his character work to his action to his plots to his pacing, and just refines them to absolute, just like pinpoint peak. Like, this guy is operating on a whole nother level. And I have to tell you guys right now, immediately, that the Age of Madness trilogy is the best fantasy trilogy I've ever read so far. This book and this trilogy are awesome. And I think The Wisdom of Crowds is honestly Joe Abercrombie's crowning achievement when it comes to fantasy books so far. It takes everything good about First Law, all the things I've ever praised this series about, from, great character writing to great action to some great and intriguing thoughts when it comes to morality and philosophy and politics, and just takes it to another level. He turns it all the way up. He hits the dial to 12, and he just perfects it. This book is utterly amazing. It is so dark, it is so cynical, but it also has some of the best humor in the series so far. It has some of the best shining moments from our characters so far. And I don't know, as much as I want more First Law books, and if Joe decides to write more in this series, I will absolutely be happy with that. I also think that the way that this one in particular ends is very satisfying because it leaves open a lot of ideas for us as the readers to think about, a lot of possibilities for the future, and even just the tiniest amount of hope. There is also a ton of dread. Don't get me wrong. This is still absolutely First Law, but I felt just a tiny bit of hope for some of my characters that maybe, just maybe, if they apply themselves in the right direction at the right time, they can actually achieve some good in their world, while some of our other characters lost out, and in a big way. And honestly, there is one character in particular in here who their ending, although I thought it was very satisfying and it was written well, I was devastated by. So not only is Joe writing really good books, but I think he's delivering on them emotionally as well. Abercrombie, to me, has the best cast of characters besides maybe George R. R. Martin. And just all of them are such, they're awful people, but they're lovable. They're hateable, but I really want to see where they go. And I feel like Age of Madness is that to its like absolute last degree. All these characters, there were so many moments where I was rooting for them one second and hating them another, and I don't know. This trilogy really is just that good. And if for some reason you haven't begun the First Law series, I highly, highly, highly recommend it, especially for people who like good character work. If you are someone who calls themselves a character-focused reader and you have not for some reason started the First Law series, please do. Please, please, please do. Because this entire series is awesome. All of these trilogies, from the standalones to the first trilogy and to the final one, are all great in their own ways. And everyone, there's a debate about which trilogy is the best out of the three of them. But for me, Age of Madness just represents everything great about First Law. I thought the way it connected to the standalones and to the original trilogy was awesome. I love the world building. I love the politics. I love the commentary on revolution and power and what it does and who it can upset and why those things happen and what happens when you have a revolution but nothing to replace it with. All of these things were really great. I thought the characters were great. I thought this had arguably some of the best, if not the best, action that Joe Abercrombie has written in his series so far. which is incredibly high praise because I think Joe Abercrombie writes the best action in fantasy. And no, that's not even a debate for me. I actually do think he writes the best action. So yeah, The Wisdom of Crowds is awesome. That's all I really have to say. It's a 10 out of 10, and Age of Madness is probably the best fantasy trilogy I've read so far, and it's going to be really, really, really hard to top because this was everything I wanted from Joe Abercrombie's First Law and so, so, so much more. Honestly, I just can't say anything bad about this trilogy. I really can't. It was great. And if you haven't begun First Law, please do, because it is excellent. It's one of the best fantasy trilogies or fantasy series of all time. And Joe Abercrombie, in my opinion, is the best living fantasy author. So read it.